Many things are still a baffling mystery in our world. Science doesn't quite yet have all the answers or all the keys to unlock the secrets of our universe. Every day, somewhere, someone sees something they can't explain. Something that we're told is not there, is not real, or simply doesn't exist. Too many reliable people tell of sightings and encounters with the unknown. The myths, legends, folklore, and old wives' tales are usually based in fact and in reality. When a witness to such a strange encounter finds no one believes them and faces ridicule from people they trust and love, they turn to us. Well, hello, and welcome to this Alabama adventure. One of my favorite TV shows, and it still is in reruns and on YouTube, was The Twilight Zone. I'm sure if you're watching the videos that I do on the paranormal topics and that type of stuff, that you've seen The Twilight Zone, and you probably like it too. And what I'm trying to do is to come up with another name for our little series of ghost and that type of stuff videos that we're going to do. And I think I've come up with something. You may come up with something better, and if you do, pass it along to me. I'll be glad to use it, and of course give you credit for it if you would like your name mentioned on here. But anyway, what happened today, I had a very nice group of people from the University of North Alabama in Huntsville come down to do an interview, and they contacted me last week that they wanted to come down today. This is Saturday, June 24th, I believe. Maybe not the exact date, but anyway, it's pretty close to June 24th, 2017. And I was going through some of my files for some of the things that they wanted me to talk about on this interview, and I ran across this particular story here that was told to me in the early 1970s. Anyway, I didn't make a whole lot of notes on the story. I was just beginning my paranormal investigation career, I guess you call it, and I just made a few notes. This came from a relative of mine, and she told it to me. I guess she just wanted somebody to tell it to. I was really not into the paranormal stuff at that time, but as I said, I guess she just needed somebody to talk to, somebody to tell what happened, because it was kind of a strange encounter that they had that night. But anyway, we'll get into that story in just a minute. And I would like to say, as I always do when we start these Alabama adventures, from the tail end of the Appalachian Mountain chain in the heart of the South, this is Alabama Adventures. Okay, and as I always do, I always give a little background setting so you'll kind of know what the story is about and what we're going to be talking about in a minute. And what it was is this particular relative had gotten married, I guess about 2 or 3 years earlier, and she and her husband worked for the state of Georgia. Okay, they either both put in to have a vacation at the same time, or their vacations came up at the same time. I don't remember exactly what, and that's not that important, other than it was important to them to spend their vacation time together. What happened here is they had been married about 2 years, maybe a little bit longer, somewhere around 2 years. But anyway, they decided on this particular vacation, rather than going up to Tennessee to the mountains or down to Florida to the beach, that they would just get in the car and just make a drive. They wanted to go like out west to see some of the tourist attractions out there, like the Grand Canyon. And I can't think of anything else right offhand, but anyway, all the tourist attractions out west. They were just going to make a loop around out through there and see them. And of course, we do have some relatives in southern Louisiana, and they were going to visit them on the way back. And it was just going to be a relaxing drive, vacation there for about a week or so. But anyway, what happened on this particular encounter is they didn't have GPS and cell phones, that type of stuff back in the early 1970s. So they were just using a paper road map to find their way. They knew the towns and they knew the locations they wanted to go see. So that's what they were going to just do is they had it mapped out on the map and everything. But what happened one day is they got lost and it was beginning to get a little bit dark and they began looking for a hotel or a motel or something to spend the night in. They weren't exactly sure exactly where they were at, and but they knew whenever they did find a hotel that the desk clerk or whoever there could certainly direct them on to where they needed to go the next morning. But that's what the story is going to be about: a stay in a old, quaint hotel, two-story hotel. Whenever they discovered this hotel along the roadway, it was a looked like a turn of the century, or a turn of the 20th century, back in the early 1900s hotel, and they just thought that that's what it was, kind of a theme of a old hotel like that. But anyway, as Rod Serling would say in the Twilight Zone, I guess you figured out by now that this will be no ordinary overnight stay in a hotel. They were about to spend the night in the Twilight Zone. And I have tried to come up with another name similar to Twilight Zone. And as I said, if you can come up with something that sounds good, just let me know, and I'll be glad to give you credit for naming the little series that I would like to do. But I guess you have figured out by now that this weary couple will not spend the night in an ordinary hotel room. They are about to spend the night in the shadow region. All right, we may be about to spend the night in the shadow region also. I guess you noticed as the video began that this chair had a squeak to it. So I went and got some lubricant and have sprayed it real good. It's still making a little bit of noise. I don't mean to rock whenever I'm doing this. It's just that the chair goes back with me sometimes, but maybe I have quietened it down. That's one thing I wanted to tell you real quick. One other thing that I want to tell you real quick is a very good friend of mine on WRLA radio. His name is Paul Clapp, and he does a paranormal talk show every Saturday afternoon from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock Central Time. It's in West Point, Georgia, and let me give you the call letters on that radio station one more time. It's WRLA 1490 AM, and you might want to tune in with Paul. He has a lot of guests on there. They talk about all type of paranormal subjects. It's from 12 noon till 2 o'clock Central Time. That's Alabama time. Georgia time, where it comes out of, West Point, Georgia, is from 1 o'clock until 3 o'clock every Saturday afternoon. I'm sure until football season gets going, and then football, Georgia or Alabama, Auburn football one will probably take its place for a while, and he may have to change times. But he has a very good show. He has some very interesting guests on there. I've been honored a time or two, and he has had me on there talking about Bigfoot and that type of stuff. Just wanted to tell you that if you are to where you can listen to that, it is a very interesting paranormal talk show, and I'm not sure if it is online or not. You might want to Google it and pull it up. It could very well be broadcast online as well. But anyway, now let's get on back to the little story that I'm going to tell you about this hotel stay. Alrighty, so they were going down this little country road. It was a pretty good little road, they said. They said, of course, back in those days, I don't think there were as many interstates as there are now. But they said it was a very well-maintained road, and they were going down this road. Lost, kind of, pretty much. But anyway, looking for a place to stay to spend the night, get a little rest from their travel. Anyway, they saw this place, looked at it. It was an old two-story hotel, and when they first saw it, it reminded them of early 1900s. But they just figured that was the theme that the hotel was. And the courtyard and the front yard, whatever you want to call it, parking lot, looked very clean. The sign out front was in very good condition. And that's something that I always went by because I was in the sign business at one time. And whenever I was looking for anything, a hotel or a place to eat or just anything like that, I always looked for their sign. If they had a good looking sign, then that made an impression on me. And I thought, well, it's probably a pretty clean place if they have a good looking sign out front. We'll make a little plug for all the sign companies. Whenever you are in business, the first thing that you come in contact with your customers with is your sign. That's why you need a good looking sign out front. And I use that a lot to get a lot of sign jobs that I've done. But that is the way that people view your business a lot of times. If you have a good looking sign out front, they're going to stop and talk to you about whatever type of business that you're running whenever they do need your service. Anyway, after I've done that little plug and got sidetracked there, let's get back to the story. They pulled up in the parking lot, which, as I mentioned earlier, was very clean, very well kept parking lot. The old building was very nice looking. And they walked up to the front. The front was a wide building, and as I said, two-story. It had double wooden doors there in the front with a lot of glass work in the door and that type of stuff. And there was a doorman at the door. Okay, he opened the door for them, and they walk into this lobby. And it's a very extravagant looking place whenever they walk into it. Both my relative, I almost called her name. Let me just say that I am going to call her Agatha. Agatha, you need an Agatha in any mystery or especially a ghost story that you're doing. Agatha is just a good name for a woman that needs to be the leading character in a mystery. All right, and then I'm going to call her husband Robert, because Robert is a very dignified name for a man, and so that's what we're going to call this couple, so I can make it a little bit more plainer, as Robert and Agatha. Both Robert and Agatha are very much into antiques and that type of stuff. They have always enjoyed buying antiques and furnishing their house and that type of stuff. And as a matter of fact, after they both retired from working for the state of Georgia for many years, they decided that they would open a little antique shop where they did antique restoration, refinishing, that type of stuff, and had a very successful business for several years until they decided to sell it. And I'm sure they would have hung on to it, but like all of us, you get a little old and you get a little age on you, you're just not as able to do things that you plan to do in your retirement, as I have certainly found out. Anyway, now back to the story. I know everybody's saying, well, yeah, just get back to the story whenever you have time. That's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, as they walked into the place, that was one thing that they noticed. It was completely furnished with all type of antiques, old sofas, chairs, just all kind of stuff was antique. And Robert began noticing the woodwork. A lot of exotic wood, I guess you would call it, like oak, maple. I was trying to think of what else he told me that was in there. Just all type of very nice wood was in this lobby. Okay, they go up to the desk, the front desk, I guess, or whatever. And of course, the desk clerk walks up. Very nice looking man, they said, and said he was dressed in like early 1900 clothing, but they just thought that this was part of the atmosphere and everything. So they did sign the register, and back in those days, you did have to sign the register. Credit cards were just, I guess, beginning to sort of come out in the 60s and 70s, making reservations like that over the phone and that type of stuff. But anyway, they did sign the register, and Agatha said one thing that she thought was very realistic and that type of stuff was the pen that you signed the register with. You had to actually dip it in an inkwell and sign your name. So that was kind of, a lot of fun, I guess, returning back in time or something like that. Signing the register by dipping your quill or whatever it's called in an old inkwell. And she said she actually commented about it whenever she signed their name in, and said the guy behind the desk looked like, well, it was just an everyday thing, and I guess it was in that particular hotel. So anyway, he told them, their room number, gave them a key. It wasn't a card like you slide now in hotels. As a matter of fact, Robert said it was an old skeleton key like they used to use indoors many, many years ago. Skeleton keys probably hadn't been used since World War II, but unless just somebody just had one in the house that they continued to use for years. But I think skeleton keys and that type of door lock was replaced around World War II. I know you're sitting there thinking, come on, tell the story, tell what happened. I'm trying my best. It's just taking me a little bit because I'm having to remember all of this off the top of my head. As I said, I didn't make very many notes on it, and I have read them over. And I'm getting old, and I'm just doing the best I can tonight. But anyway, I'm having a good time telling about it. So I hope you're having a good time listening to it. The desk clerk explained to them this, that, and the other, told them their room number, rang a little bell, and I believe it was called a bus boy or something like that, bag boy. I can't remember exactly what it was called. The little guy that picks up your luggage and carries it upstairs for you. And they said that that was another thing in this hotel. Said there was this grand set of stairs that you had to walk up to the second floor. And Agatha told me, said, if you remember watching Gone with the Wind, in that one scene where Scarlett comes running down the stairs, I guess in Tara, I believe is where it was. I'm not sure. It's been so long since I watched that movie. But I do remember the staircase she was talking about. And she said it was very similar to that. It was a very wide staircase, and it went from the bottom floor all the way to the top floor, and it was solid wood. And I remember Robert telling me what kind of wood it was made out of. I'm sure it was made out of oak, since you'd be walking on it and you needed a very hard wood for that. I won't say 100% it was oak, but I'm pretty sure it was. But anyway, they started their way upstairs to their room. The desk clerk had also told them earlier what room number they were in, and it seemed like it was like room 217, I believe was what she told me that it was. And he had told her that the bathroom where they could take a bath, I believe it had a shower in it, was just right down the hall. The rooms, I guess, were authentic as the turn of the century, when each room wasn't plumbed with commodes and showers and bathtubs and that type of stuff. But she said it was an old time bathtub that sat up on legs, and you stepped over in it, and then you pulled a curtain, and you had a cord you pulled, and the water ran down. You could set it, I'm sure, hot or cold. But she said what was kind of odd about it was that it was very authentic as you pulled the cord, and a shower head over top of you, the water sprinkled down on you. But now that's getting a little bit ahead of the story. But anyway, they did have to go down the hallway to get a shower that night. Let me back up just a minute. One of the members in here tonight said that they thought the guy that carried the bags up to your room in those days was called a bellhop. And it seems like that may be what it is. I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll say the bellhop carried the bags upstairs for them. They also noticed something else that was kind of unusual about this place. It did have some electric lights in it, like it had a large chandelier in the lobby. But they also noticed that a lot of the lighting in the room was kerosene lamps, was old kerosene lamps, and even on the side of the wall, walking down the hallway, several kerosene lamps lit the way down there. But they just thought it was all part of the theme, part of the atmosphere that they were doing. Okay, now I apologize. I am getting ahead of myself on some of the parts of the story, but I am trying my best to remember everything. Turn the camera off there for a moment or two and check what few little notes I had. Let me get back to the desk clerk. He also told them before the bellhop carried the luggage upstairs and that type of stuff on, that they had a bar. He didn't call it a lounge or anything like that. He said that they had a bar that had a dance floor, and they would have live music down there if they wanted to go down to the bar and drink and dance and that type of stuff, that they were welcome to use it since they were guests there. He also said that they had a pool out back that they would be welcome to use, and that many of the guests did use it at night, because this particular hotel was kind of a resort that had springs in it, like sulfur and some other mineral. Maybe maybe 3 or 4 different minerals. I can't remember exactly, but I do remember she said that it had those type springs that you could get in for health purposes like they used to have around the turn of the century in several places. She said as they started up the stairs, they just walked by over near where the pool was, and of course it was pretty much well lit with what appeared to be gas or kerosene lamps around. She said what she noticed, as well as Robert noticed it too, that all the guests were wearing old-time swimsuits, or not the modern day 1960s, early 70s swimsuits like people were wearing at that particular time. He and she both said what they noticed was some of the women were like wearing not what you would call a bikini. They were actually wearing, some were wearing 2-piece swimsuits. Most of them were just wearing a 1-piece, older looking type swimsuit out there as far as the women. And if you will remember, back in the 40s and 50s, 2-piece swimsuits were becoming popular, but the bottom of those suits came at least to the woman's belly button, and most of them covered the woman's belly button back then. Then in the 60s and on into the 70s, bikinis came out, and bikinis were extremely low cut compared to these old 2-piece swimsuits, if you have seen pictures or movies with those in there. And I believe bikinis back then, some of them were called hip huggers, because that's about all they covered in back. They managed, if you pulled them up high enough, they would at least cover up your hips, and they were extremely low cut in the front. But she even went back to the desk and told the desk clerk that she did have a swimsuit, but could she purchase one there similar to what everybody else was wearing. She did tell him that she had a bikini, and she said when she mentioned bikini, the guy kind of looked at her kind of hard, like he didn't know what she was talking about. But then that's when she asked if they had swimsuits there that she could actually purchase. And as far as Robert, he would have to bought one too. He said all he had as far as a swimsuit was like a pair of cut-off blue jean shorts. That's what he was going to use. They just began to notice all of this type of stuff, that everybody was going along with the theme of the hotel, if indeed that's what it was. They got on in the room that night, and they said there was actually a water bowl and a water basin there for you to wash your hands, wash your face, whatever. And I may have already said earlier, maid did come by and bring towels and that type of stuff, and turn down the bed and all this type of stuff, just as they used to do around the turn of the century. She said that they decided not to use the pool or go down to the bar that night or anything, that they just wanted to go on and get a shower and get into bed and get some rest, because they had gotten kind of tired that day after they had got lost and everything, and knew they had a long day tomorrow. They had to make up some ground that they didn't cover today while they were lost and everything. So she said they just went on to bed, and said they actually opened a window a little ways on the second floor to let a breeze come through, as they thought maybe the place had central air or whatever, but said it was just comfortable in there. And they really didn't see a thermostat or anything on the wall, but they did open the window. And they said from time to time, said you could hear music real low, real soft in the background, as if it was coming from the lounge. But it just kind of was relaxing, like maybe having the radio on that night, and said it just put them off to sleep. And said the old bed that they slept in was a very old, Robert said, and it was a cherry wood bed, and it had the a canopy over the top, to where if you wanted to enclose yourself in with a curtain, like old beds in those days do, and they may still make them today, I don't know. I just sleep on a regular bed, or sleep on the couch, or sleep on the floor, or just wherever I decide to sleep. I don't have a canopy bed or anything like that. He said it was a very extravagant hotel, very nice. And so anyway, they slept there that night, and they got up the next morning, got everything packed back into bags that they had taken out, and got ready to leave. Went down to the front desk and turned the key back in, checked out, and went on their merry way. Okay, now I hope I'm not leaving out a whole lot of details, and when this relative sees it, if I did, I'm sure she'll give me a call and say, you left out the best part, so and so and so and so. They did leave that morning. Everything looked just as it did that afternoon, when that evening. Whenever they checked in, it was getting close to dark whenever they did check in. But anyway, she said that they got out of there around about 9 o'clock or so that morning and headed on down the road. They had asked the desk clerk directions to the next town where they wanted to go, and he'd been very nice and told them exactly how to get there and put them on the road out front. And anyway, that's what they did. They headed down to the next little town on the map, hoping that they were going to get back on their right route again. Anyway, as they entered this little town, and I may not have said it, but anyway, this all happened in Colorado, or where this did take place. But anyway, they went on down the road a little ways and said they ran up on a place to eat breakfast. I'm not sure if it was a Huddle House or a Waffle House or omelet shop. What's the other one? House of Pancakes, something like it. Some kind of little place similar to that where they could get breakfast. And she said that that's what they did. Since the hotel, they did not ask if they had room service, or they didn't get room service. They might not even had room service. I'm not sure. I don't remember. But they did leave as early as they could to get back on the road. But now they were ready to eat breakfast, and they pulled into this place to eat breakfast, where the mystery sort of gets a little deeper, and they begin to find out exactly what they have done, that they have actually spent a night in the shadow region. Okay, now they pull into this place to eat, and they walk in and sit down at a booth. Of course, waitress comes over, as they always did back in those days, and they still do at some places like Waffle House and those type places now. I was trying to think of the Huddle House, that type of stuff. They do still come to your table and take your order and that type of stuff. And that's what was happening this morning, and they both ordered a nice breakfast at this particular eating place. They just sort of got up a conversation with the waitress while they were waiting on their food and everything, and told them that they were really liked Colorado. It was a very beautiful place out there. This was the first time they'd ever been out, and that they were from Alabama, and they just struck up a conversation, as you sometimes do whenever you're out on vacation like that. They told them, kind of laughed about it, and told the waitress that they had gotten lost yesterday, and but they had run up on this hotel just maybe 8 or 10 miles from where they were at, and it was a very nice hotel, and I cannot remember the name of the hotel. I wish I could remember. Anyway, they told her the name of the hotel that they had stayed in, and they said when they told her the name of this hotel, her mouth just kind of came open, and she had a very surprised look on her face, and said she turned to the other waitress and told her to come over there just a minute, and to one or two of the cooks back behind the counter. She told them to come over there, that she had something that she wanted them to hear. So whenever they got over there and were all standing around the table, they related the story that I've just told you about staying in the hotel that night and everything. Whenever they told them the name of the place where they had stayed the previous night, all of them at about the same time said the same thing. They said that particular hotel burned about 30 years ago, and what's left of it is rotting down, and nobody has stayed in that hotel since it caught fire and partially burned down. And they just could not believe it, because they had actually spent the night in this hotel, a very comfortable, very extravagant hotel, as I said earlier. So anyway, they went on and ate breakfast at that place this morning, and they talked with the employees there. Matter of fact, they said there were some other local people come in to get breakfast or to get them a cup of coffee or whatever, and some that these people knew. I guess they were regulars in there. The employees told some of the locals that my relatives had spent the night in this old, burned out, rotting down, decaying hotel, and they all talked about it, and come to find out, this particular incident happened every once in a while out there. Somebody would come by, not on a regular basis, but maybe this year, maybe it might go 2 or 3 or 4 years before anybody stayed in the old hotel again. But it had not only happened to them, it had actually happened to some other people. But anyway, they just could not believe that what these people were telling them, that that hotel was in shambles and this type of stuff. Whenever they got through eating, that's what they told them, that they were going back out there. They wanted to see this hotel. And this one man and his wife, or his girlfriend, whoever she was, said, well, we'll go back out there with you because we know where the place is. And they followed them in their vehicle out there to where the hotel was. And sure enough, when they pulled into the driveway, the old sign that they had seen and thought was such a nice sign when they first pulled in was the main reason that they pulled into the hotel, because it was a very nice looking sign out there on the side of the road. Was in bad need of repair, in bad need of repainting, pretty much just in need of replacing. And when they turned into the drive and into the parking lot, that's when they saw the building. The building on one end was completely burned out, where a fire had started some 30 years ago. The actual inn where they had stayed that night was in shambles, or whatever you want to call it. The roof was falling in, paint was peeling off of it. It was pretty much rotting down. And Robert said his mouth just came open, and he was just in shock. Of course, Agatha, when she saw this, threw her hands over her face and screamed. But anyway, because they had actually stayed in this place the night before, and it was in perfect condition. Anyway, they had a camera back then, and Agatha went to the trunk to get the camera out. She said that they had not been long purchased a camera that made pictures instantly. As I think in the 1960s and 70s, Polaroid came out with their first Instamatic camera, and that was what she made some pictures of this hotel with. But the bad thing about it, she had made some pictures off of this roll, and if you remember those old Polaroid cameras, whenever you click the button, mechanism within the camera pushed the photograph out, and you held it whenever you made another one, and it would click and it would press another photograph out. But she said she made about 5 photographs of this building with this Polaroid Instamatic camera, and none of the pictures made. They all came out black. All right, she goes back to the trunk whenever she decides something's wrong with the camera or whatever. But she had, as I said, made pictures previous off the roll. I think rolls back then had 10 or maybe 12 blank photographs that you could make a picture out of back then. And she had made like 4 or 5 the day before. They'd all come out perfect. Then that day that she tried to make pictures of this burned out hotel, none of the Instamatic pictures made, as if something was wrong with the camera. But anyway, they did have a good 35mm camera, a Kodak 35mm camera back then. And now this was one of the old cameras that had to have film that you would have to carry to your local drugstore when you made up the whole roll, and they would develop it, and then like 2 or 3 days later you'd go back and get those pictures. They had made several pictures on the roll. They made several pictures of the hotel. They even made pictures of them standing in front of the hotel in the condition it was that they found it the next morning when they went back. And anyway, then on into the vacation, they made other pictures of other tourist attractions, such as Grand Canyon. And I think they went to Boulder Dam, I believe is what it's called. It's been so long since I read a history book on it, I can't remember what. They went to some dam out there, and they made several pictures of that. They made several pictures of the Grand Canyon, some other places along the way. Even whenever they got to Louisiana, they made pictures of some of the relatives out there with them. All the pictures on the roll developed, except the few pictures that they made of the old hotel, which was, I forgot how many she said, 5 or 6 pictures of the hotel. Some of the pictures had him or had her in the photograph. None of the pictures of the old hotel made. So it was just kind of a mystery that for some reason the hotel could not be photographed, or apparently that was the way that it seemed. But anyway, that was a story that I thought you might be interested in, that I just ran across. I had pretty much forgotten about it until, as I said, these people from North Alabama University out of Huntsville came down today, and we did do a little documentary interview, and I came across this in some of my notes, and I wish I could find all my notes I had back then. I remember the first notebook that I went to making notes in and writing down some of these stories was a spiral-bound white paper notebook. It was made by Quail. That was the name of the company that was on front, Quail. It had a picture of a quail on it and seemed like a picture of a flag, of a little triangular flag on it, and it was yellow. If you ever find that and it's mine, I would appreciate you returning it. I have no idea what happened to that notebook over the years. That's been some nearly 50 years ago now. I would certainly like to have it. But it's just one of those things that you just have to do without sometimes, that come and go in life, as that particular notebook did. But I did find this in a folder where I had Agatha's real name, and then I had made a note out beside it. I had just say Agatha and then dash haunted hotel. But anyway, that was their story of a phantom hotel that they came up on that night, and I have often wondered maybe what happened, and you kind of tell me what you think might have happened out there. I believe they passed through some type of time portal, and they did actually go back in time, and then maybe the next morning they drove out of that time portal. I know that kind of sounds a little far-fetched or whatever, but through the paranormal investigations that I have done over the years, I guarantee you nothing in this world is impossible. And time travel, which I always thought was pretty much impossible, could very well be real, and this could have been exactly what happened to them. You let me know what you think. And so, as we're bringing this video on to a close now, I got a little something else I want to tell you about real quick. You might want to check out a movie that starred Christopher Reeves, Somewhere in Time. Back in the late 1980s, I had a somewhat special girlfriend, and she and I watched this movie on several different occasions. She was the one that found it to start with, and it was a very good movie. I really enjoyed it. She's a very special person in my life, and if she's watching this, I'm going to go watch the movie again. It brings back a lot of memories. Okay, so I'm going to try to close this video in Rod Serling Twilight Zone fashion. The next time you decide to go on a sightseeing vacation in a state you're unfamiliar with, before you stay in the first hotel you come to, you might want to check the local history, or you too could spend the night in the shadow region. So now, as I always do, I'd like to say hello to my granddaughter Madison. I would also like to tell you that the Alabama Bigfoot Society is run completely out of pocket, and if you're in a position to where you can and where you would like to make a donation, it would be very much appreciated. All you have to do is to go to our website, alabamabigfootsociety.com, and there on the front page you'll find a place where you can make that donation. Also check out our items for sale page. You might find something that you just can't live without on there. And anyway, if you like this video, hope you give us a like. If you like what we're doing down here with our paranormal investigations and our storytelling, we would like for you to subscribe to the channel. And I guess with all that being said, I'll see you somewhere in time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot.